Hello and good evening. My name is Kizito Musabimana and I am the Rwandan Canadian Healing Center's founder and executive director. Tonight, like every other night, we welcome you and bring you the AfriCanadian Resource Center, a platform that we are working to develop, which will bring together resources from the continental African Canadian community, helping to create a platform where people can come and learn about the African community here in Canada, and especially right now during COVID. So we thank you once again for joining us. Share this program to your friends. Let them know that we are here every day from 6 to 7. Also, share our platforms, the social media platforms, because we really want to make sure that we can get to everybody in the community. And for the next 3 months, we want to make sure that we bring you the most crucial update, daily updates, news, and information when it comes to COVID and the African Canadian community. Without further ado, let's go do this.
What does it mean to be a black person living in the Americas? What does it mean to be an African Canadian living in the fourth biggest city in North America? Or an even better question is, what is the experience of a Rwandan Canadian living in the most multicultural nation on the globe, yet see no skyscrapers belonging to anyone who looks like you? According to Statistics Canada, Canadians of African descent are more than twice as likely as those in the overall population to have low income. So what does it mean to be an African Canadian?
In the last 3 years, I've had the opportunity to work alongside African Canadian leaders, partnering with leading organizations in areas of business, social, and government sectors. And I was able to see firsthand that no one individual, organization, or even institution can solve the challenges that we face alone. The government and all its agencies cannot improve our conditions without our ongoing involvement. From elders living in elderly homes, young people seeking wisdom and advice, to young adults who are seeking to lead yet still face the impossible mental, physical, and spiritual blocks as they try to turn their vision into action. From poverty, discrimination, and lack of long-term vision. These and many others are the reason why Rwandan Canadian Healing Center has decided to launch its activities with Alkebrand as its inaugural project. Through this project, participants are going to learn to craft individual visions, receive mentorship, consulting, as well as capacity building. Our focus is going to be on anti-poverty curriculum, community and individual wellness, cross-sector collaboration, as well as the preservation of African Canadian stories. In line with our Canadian values, we believe that everybody should have equal representation, as well as the capacity to engage on issues as well as opportunities. It is in this spirit that I am proud to announce that the Rwandan Canadian Healing Center has received a grant from Canadian Heritage, which will allow us to launch phase 1 of our project to train young leaders, as well as provide e-capacity support and raise awareness to African Canadian community works. So if you're an organizer or if you have experience organizing, if you have an issue that you would like to champion from your community, if you're an expert who would like to contribute to any one of our programs, we invite you to join us by going to our website and signing up. All right. Welcome to the AfriCanadian Resource Center. As you have seen tonight, we kind of changed the things a little bit, but we wanted to sort of give you a little bit of background. Obviously, you just saw a video from our organization. Also, they talked about the work that we've been doing, the leadership development program that we've been running during the last few months. We started that program last year. We were able to get funding from the Heritage Canada, and then of course this year we also did get another funding from the Red Cross. As an organization that's been running for 1 year, we actually know how we are honored and we know how lucky we are to be able to actually get funding that, in that kind of fashion. And so we take that privilege to continue to bring you these stories every day, because we know that there are not so many organizations that are getting this kind of funding or are getting the opportunity to provide these kind of services to the community. We really want to continue to ask that you share our work, that you let other people know, because you never know who is looking for these kinds of information. Tonight, we are going to bring you someone that is very influential in our community, very young, but also very interesting in terms of the work that she's doing. That we wanted to bring somebody, we want to continue to bring, of course, different individuals, but tonight, this person will leave you wanting to hear more from this person, but also wanting to get involved in the community, because this is the person that this person is. But before we get to that, we would like to give you a bit of news, what's going on in Toronto. Of course, most of our news is surrounding COVID. We want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date. I know for me as an individual, I don't watch that much news on a regular basis. So this is where I catch most of my COVID news and other things that are going on around the world. So to begin, tonight or today, we learned that the global death from coronavirus hit 1 million today. Obviously, this is a huge number since, I believe, March or February, mid-February, March. COVID has taken over 1 million people. That's really something scary to know and to think about, something that we didn't even know of as a virus a few years back. So we are really concerned, and we ask you to continue to protect yourself and to protect the people around you by following the measures that are given in your communities and regions. The other thing we learned today is that Quebec has closed bars, cinemas, and other places of social gathering. And they are going back to lockdown, obviously, which is, I think what we're learning, as we were telling you yesterday, this idea of closure, it's becoming a reality for us in the next few days and weeks, because we can see that when we opened it up, for example, here in Ontario, we were on level 4. We were, like right now, we're being told by OHA that they are calling for Ontario government to return to stage 2. That's also a new update. It's obviously we're not at stage 2 yet, but this is the call. And again, we cannot say that we hope that this doesn't happen, or that we hope that, you know, because I think many of us don't want the closures, but also we understand why they're taking place, because obviously this pandemic is sort of has a brain of its own. The other thing that we learned today is that 63% of the newly diagnosed patients were under the age of 40. That is scary, because I think most of us thought this disease is affecting people with a weak immune system, elder patients, and of course a lot of the survivors, the people who are surviving it on a higher rate, it's mostly young people. But the scary part about it is because young people could have also could be in contact with people that that are much older, that have weaker, or people who have weaker immune system. If you remember last week, we had somebody from the AIDS Foundation, or an organization that helps people with HIV/AIDS, and these are realities for many of our people. So we really want to make sure that we remind you, especially for those of us in the least privileged communities, protect yourself, stay safe. Make sure that you're safe, whether it's at home or in the communities where we visit. Last thing that I want to mention before we go for a break is that worldwide cases of the coronavirus have surpassed 32.9 million. That is, again, insurmountable number of people. And so as we look around the world, we know for sure yesterday we had news about the conditions of the African continent. We are still doing better than the rest of the world, and we hope to remain that way. But these numbers put a shock in most of our systems, including here in Ontario, in Canada, as of course you heard from Quebec. These are numbers that we really have to be careful about, and we have to maintain the level of social distancing, of course the idea of washing your hands, doing all of this work that needs to be done. So as we do that, let's take you to a commercial that helps you to continue maintaining this level of distancing. Thank you.
A message from the Government of Canada.
We all talk about how the future is for the next generation, for young people, for people who are still developing. We always talk about how we need to leave the world a better place. But how often do you actually get to meet those people? How often do you get to have those conversations? How often do you actually give them the key and entrust them with that future? Because I think sometimes we wait and we give them that key when it's too late, they are no longer young. Tonight, I'm going to bring you a young lady who is working to change that, whether it's through her work in non-for-profit or in the communities where she is. Rita Ngarambe, the young lady I'm going to have a discussion with tonight, is trying her best to be the change that we all look for. And I feel like what I'm trying to have as a discussion tonight is one of those things where we want to look at the future from the lens of young people. We want to see, if we were in charge, what can we do? What is there to do? And that's what we're going to bring you tonight. Of course, I'm going to talk about other things that Rita has done in her past here in Canada, and of course, where she grew up back in Rwanda. And we're going to look at the world from the view of a young person like her. What does the future look like? Is there hope? What hope are we talking about? And if there is hope, what do we need to do to get to that place right now? Not waiting until Rita turns 50 or 40 like we always do. How can we actually take this key from these leaders we have today and hand it to the young people? And of course, maintain the leadership of the elders, the mentorship, the acceleration that they need to move forward. That is the discussion I'm going to have tonight with Rita Ngarambe of the Rwandan community here in Toronto.
When one asked what to say during a global pandemic period, it's a hard time and a rough one for one to find words. You read the newspapers, you look at the television, and everything just looks to be rushing and stopping at the same time, to be going in slow motion. We have children who are stuck at home with not enough food or with abusive parents. You have wives who are facing domestic violence. We have fathers who no longer have work to provide for their families. We have stock markets that are crashing every single second that we're stuck at home. And you look at the modern countries where you are one click away from affording the food for your dinner time, affording the milk or the juice for your child tonight. But some people just don't have the luxury of communication even to talk to your loved ones. It is a hard time. The only calculation, the only math we can afford to do right now is calculating how many people have been affected, how many people have died so far, how many have recovered. It is really, really a wrong time to even find anything to be thankful about. Some of us were used to taking trips from one country to another to enjoy the beauty and the luxury of nature, but now the only trip we take is to the kitchen, to your bathroom, to the washroom, and that's it. So what do you say when you're in the midst of a global pandemic period? They say the hardest time is not the war zone, it's not when the bombs are being thrown to the people or when the children are screaming. The tough time for the living or the survivors is the aftermath. When you realize you're sitting in the middle of a dusty ground, when you realize you're sitting in the middle with no parent to call upon, you've lost your grandfather along the way, you've lost your family, your loved ones, it's the aftermath that kills the living. So how do you survive and how do you move on from something like this? It shows to be promising that all this will come to an end sometime soon, but one cannot stop but question, how do we move on after this? After the economy has collapsed, after the jobs have been lost, after the bosses that have let off some people because they can no longer afford to pay them. Well, this is the moment when we all turn to ourselves and to each other. Realize we cannot depend on the outside things, but what lies within, which is love. A heart beating faster for each blood in our lungs and each breath
then you get to realize you're still alive. Realize the only thing that will stand for so long and longer than this moment, longer than the pandemic, longer than everything that we've been and gone through, is the humanity in us. The love and care for one another, the prayers we send forth to the countries, to the nations, to those further away from ours. You realize the only thing keeping us moving is the hope for tomorrow. And that alone, its roots, its source, is the humanity in us. It's us coming together and saying we are in this together. Not just on the challenges on the Instagram or the videos that we get to send, or the news, the negative news that we get to update on each other, but the positive thing that we say. The phone call I made to my mother this morning, the child that I said hi to on my WhatsApp group, like every single good act that I have done in this long distance. Or even the healthcare professionals who have worked endeavors, who have worked for a long period of time just so we can stay safe, so they can do their best and we can just get another chance to face tomorrow. You realize there's nothing more than yourself, there is nothing beyond what we humans can afford and to give to each other. And may God in us always, always help us flourish the humanity.
Days like this, when people understand what I mean. There'll be days like this, when you ring out the changes of how everything is. Well, my mama told me there'll be days like this. Well, my mama told me there'll be days like this. Well, my mama told me there'll be days like this.
As you listen to that video by Rita Ngarambe, she did this video when COVID was just hitting, and many of us didn't know what the world was going to look like. And if you listen to her voice, and I'm going to talk to her about it right now, you will see. Maybe she can tell us what she was thinking, because for me, when I got that video and listened to it, I was so moved. And we were thinking about many people. I don't know if you remember, but a few months ago, the RCHC, United for Humanity, and Kerry Toronto, we raised money that we were sending back home. Eventually, we ended up raising $10,000. And that was part of the work that we were doing. We had a concert. We had many young artists from Rwanda that joined us. And that video that you just heard right there was a part of those promotionals that we're doing, but also the idea of what Rita herself was feeling like. But before I even say so much about this, let me ask Rita herself, who joins us on the call. Rita, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
So good. I just want you to maybe start right here by telling us a little bit about the video we just saw. What were you feeling during the time you made that piece?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I feel honored and really glad to be here. So back to your question, what I was thinking when I was doing that video was, I sort of was questioning where I was. I wanted some things. I wanted to go out to the market to buy, to hang out with my friends, to go to poetry shows. And then also my father at the time was calling me. He's like, oh, let's order some things online so we can be safe. And then I was questioning, I was sitting there, I'm like, what's happening with my grandparents back home? What's happening with they don't have a phone, I can't even call them on WhatsApp. So I'm like, what are they doing right now? And I'm questioning all these things to think of. I don't have any school to stop. I was just working, and I was working from home. So I felt really safe, and I'm like, we can't compare pains. There's little things that I'm worried about. But it's not to the extent of these other people's troubles. Yeah. So I try to imagine what I feel.
Yeah, and I think for me, listening to that video then, I felt that too, because if you remember, you did that video while we were raising funds for the people back home. And then, of course, you, as a person who has a big following on social media, what was it like at the time? What was the comments, if you don't mind sharing? What were you getting, not just specifically from people back home, but what were you getting from the people around, the people who follow you? What were they saying? How were they feeling then during the time that we were entering into COVID?
So to the few people that were able to reach out to me directly, apart from just the public comments, was it's amazing how they were able to look outside themselves. Not in a way like we look at ourselves, we care for ourselves, and that's how self-love is the most important thing. But to be able to love yourself while loving others is like one point that came up so many times. They were like, I want to care for myself, I want to buy these things, I want to know how I'm going to survive over the next 4 months that I'm in the lockdown. But I also want to know how is the other person surviving, how are they facing their troubles. So to know, and as an artist, as a human being, as a woman, that I'm able to change someone's perspective, to shift it, not just look for themselves, but to think of the same. It's like I'm saving myself so I can save someone else. Was the most alternative, like ultimate accomplishing feeling I've had. Yeah.
Yeah, and for you, obviously, for people who don't know, you have an organization here in Toronto, not necessarily here in Toronto, but you are based in Toronto. The organization is called United for Humanity. You talked about that last week when you were on our program. But tell the audience, what is the organization and what was your intentions? Actually, maybe let me ask you that. What were your intentions when you started that organization?
So my intentions when I started that organization was, do you mind me reading something? It's like a whole speech. It's a speech by this woman. She's a UN activist. And she was saying that I was born in a world of borders, genocide, race and racism, poverty and criminality. And since I could not change the world around me, I created a world inside me. And I held on to it. It was a world with no borders, no genocides or criminality. It was a world of hope. To deny hope or purpose, to deny one's life. For what is life without purpose or hope, but a mockery of living, an illusion of existence, an illusion, a state of being, a pale copy of reality. It is hope and purpose that has allowed humankind to thrive under the most adventurous conditions. So this has been like, as soon as I laid eyes into this, I was like, this is everything I have been dreaming of. When I walk into a room, when I walk into an office, and as an immigrant in this country, there is specific questions they want me to ask. There is, what are you here for? Do you need do you need help with insurance number? And I'm like, okay, that's what I'm here for, but I also need a work permit. They're like, no, we don't specify in this. So I need to go to this different office to get this. I'm like, what if you looked past just one need and you were able to narrow down everything I want? Like almost like a storybook, almost like a rule book, but not just of directions, but of I care for you. I want you to be able to get where you want to go. Look past my skin color, look past my gender, look past my religion, my love language, everything. See me as human. Count me as yours. See me as if I were you. How would you help yourself? So that's what United for Humanity was. I feel like humanity is something that we all have, and it's the common ground we can ever stand on together.
Amazing. It is the hope and purpose, and humanity allows us to remember that, you know. Obviously, you reading that and me sort of imagining what you're going through listening to that poet, it brings you home. It brings you back to what we are all about, or at least what we should all be about, remembering what is the purpose that we serve. And I think maybe that's where I want to transition and talk about each one is purpose in our community, but specifically you and I want to focus on the young African Canadian community members, young leaders, future leaders, aspiring leaders. One of the questions that I had earlier that I wanted to maybe ask you right now is, if you were in charge today of, let's say, Canada, what would you do differently? And I'm asking to you as an African young person, but I'm also asking to you as a Canadian person. If you were in charge, what would you do differently to help bring that humanity to reality?
That's a tough question, but also so simple. I think the simplicity in it is what makes it harder, in the sense that if you get people to care for themselves, regardless of being slaves to money, regardless of being slaves to career and all these standards that we've put in place as humans, of I need a better job, I need a better house, I need a better car kind of mentality. And you get someone to look inside and see themselves. And then you ask them, what do you want as a person? What do you want regardless? Because they say that we spend the rest of our lives trying to find ourselves, trying to know what our purpose is. But the reality is the reverse. We're trying to get back to who we are before the world brought the rules, regulations, the standards to us. So when you bring a person, strip them of everything, of all the status quo, who are they at the end of the day? What is that deep need? You find out they're lonely. You find out they're trying to get these materialistic things to fill the void. You find out they're all broken human beings who need love, who need comfort. So if you teach them to give that to themselves, and then you tell them to do unto others what they wish could be done unto them, then I think not even just Canada, the rest of the world could be better. Because the worst problem is we don't take responsibilities. And it's not because we don't care about the outside, it's because we don't start with ourselves. We don't care about ourselves. Yes, we say we do because we buy ourselves food every lunch and dinner, but that's not the caring we mean. It's that, like, deep down, if you want to cry, I want to cry regardless of what people think of me. If I want to help someone, I want to give them, not thinking, oh, my family will think I'm wasting money. No, it's about getting back to who you're meant to be. And then if you start with yourself, then you're able to give it to others.
Amazing. I'll tell you, you have so many people that agree with you, and most of them are in your generation in terms of the responsibility. The responsibility lies with us. The responsibility lies with what we do, not so much expecting others to do for us what we should be able to do for ourselves. And I like that you put how you put it. But I also always like to remind people that there are challenges. And so maybe I'm challenging you as well in terms of asking, what about people who say that yes, it's our responsibility. It is our responsibility to take care and get ourselves from the challenges that we face. What about people who say, but yes, there is, the discrimination, the anti-black racism, all of these systems that have kept our people down for so long. What about those people who say, you know what, yes, we can do all of that, but if the master or this monster that's on top of us, racism and all of those things, if this thing doesn't move, all of what we do is in vain. What about those people? What do you say to those people?
What I said to those people is, imagine what Martin Luther King was thinking at the moment, or Malcolm X. Just one single man sitting down. I have a dream that one day the enslaved children will sit down with the slave owners. That was a dream for 200 years ago. Now I'm sitting right here with the white men who share the same tea. It was a dream. I would like to think some of people were like, you're crazy. Because as soon as you even gaze upon someone's daughter, a white man's daughter, you get beatings. So if he had that a dream, what makes you think that one day your dream can never be someone else's reality? Don't live for yourself. Even if I die today, at least my words will live in someone else. So that's also another thing when I talk about responsibility. It's not about me. It's I have something to play with during this whole book. I have a chapter to write. So how perfect do I want to write it? I think it's one of the writers who was talking about Nelson Mandela, that he was once considered as a terrorist, as a rebel. And it's like, rebels, it's not mainly that they oppose threats to the government. No, they oppose threats to any mischief, any mistreatment. So if we all become rebels of against what's opposing us in a way, I believe in the power of the people. And once you're able to stand with one voice, regardless of how much noise is out there, it's amazing how many people have been waiting for that wake-up call. Like, look at if when the whole movement of protesting started, I believe a few people are like, how do we start it? Now the whole world is on their toes because they've been waiting for a moment like this. So some people are meant to be leaders, others are meant to be led. And the only way to find out is if we take a step forward and then realize who is who. I'll
tell you, we do have a leader, and that is right in front of me, because anytime you speak, my dear, every time you speak, it's your emotions, your passion, and the way you approach problems is something that I've wished for so many years to see in young people. And to see you, and I know there is many like you, but maybe the goal now should be, how do we bring young people like you, young people who think like you together? And that'll be my next question for you. Because really we need that. We need your voice. We need this voice of young people who take the responsibility on. And I like how you answered the question by showing us what the past have taught about. When you think of Martin Luther King and all these other individuals that have yet lived through the struggle, but always believed in the better future, believed in a light ahead. And many of them knew that they would not be able to live during that time. The realization, what they were working for was not something that they would be able to experience, but still they persisted because they believed they needed to build a better future for their next generation. So for you, Rita, how do we get young people, and please do not say, do not be too humble and say that, oh, you know, you're on average, because you're unique. People like you are unique in our community. How do we get young people like you to work together to bring these leaders that you talk about to actually come together and create this change that we all seek?
So that's an amazing question, but in a way that I think it's James Baldwin. He's like my favorite all-time poet. In his book, The Fire Next Time, he mentions that the problem with Black people is we don't look at each other. We either look up or down at one another. And I feel like that's what's happening with the rest of the world. I am into the activist world. I have a few friends who are wishing and wanting and thriving with fire, wanting to change the world. But the way we bring them down is incredibly amazing. There is like passion in the way people bring each other down. And it's like, oh my God, like how this much energy you bring into like, I don't judging one another person. I have so many activists who are so broken, who are into depression, because the same community they are fighting for is the same community that is fighting against them. And it's hard when you go to fight to bring food at home, and when you get home, you have to being fought. Like I don't know if it makes sense, but like it's two worlds at once. So it's like a divided sea, and you're in the middle, and all the wind is brushing in. And I'm like, it's incredible when you have a few people like you in the community. And so many times I get approval of words. I'm like, I want to be part of you. I want to be part of what you're doing. Can I be part of your organization? Can I help in any way? But those are words. When I bring to the table, I need A, B, C, D to make this happen, to motivate. Because the other young people are looking at me. The other young people see what I'm doing. The other young people believe in me. The other young people are inspiring to join me. But when they see me being ripped apart, they're like, no, I don't think it's worth it. I'd rather be comfortable than in putting myself on the line. So it takes another sense of selfless, like to being selfless, but also like, what am I fighting for? I'm fighting against, like, for humanity to be united. But at the same time, I'm fighting people, humans, to bring that to the table. So that's a kind of like an unquestionable balance that is, it comes back to what people need to look inside themselves. Not just the words of I approve, of I support you, of I want to help you, can I repost what you say, but can you give me a platform? Can you do what I'm asking for? Like when we say we need to end racism, and then they paint the Nathan Phillips Square, they paint the streets, but I'm talking about my child having to be able to go to school the next day. I'm talking about my husband or my brother not being shot the next day. So you see what I'm saying? It's like a painting, an illusion of acceptance, an illusion of support. And that's what the young people are scared of what if I give up everything? What if I expose myself and talk about this injustice? And then when the government comes for me, my community walks away from me.
And I think I understand exactly what you say when we try so hard. And I think for people who don't understand this, the non-for-profit work or the activism, you are more of an activist than I am. It's been like I've tried to do the activism work, and I commend you because I know you are like on the ground, you're on the battlefields. I try to do more of the advocacy, and even then there is a battle that we face. And when you're facing that battle with whether it's the change that you want to make, but you still face the same battles from your own people, it can be very defeating. And hopefully that is something that we can find a way, because I think that's an internal healing that I think many of our people need to do. For me, I always say this, and I know it's controversial, but I believe, especially for the African community, we are all struggling from a certain trauma that has been caused by the history, obviously, many of us have endured, or our ancestors. And so I guess my question to you, I know you're young, but I know you're wise, you could have an answer to this. What do we do? How do we tackle these traumas that exist in our community? How do we actually heal so we can actually see our brothers as the keepers and our sisters as the keepers of each other, so that we can raise each other, we can protect each other, and when other people attack us, we can actually back each other instead of attacking our own people? How do we create that environment for your generation, for your children? How do we do that? In your opinion, how do we do that?
I think, in my opinion, I would say, because when you explain it perfectly, it's almost, we are so good at being an umbrella. An umbrella has a huge covering at the top, but a narrow standing. So if we go down to the roots, before we meet and bring 500 people to a podium to protest, ask, go back, where is this person going after this? If we ask like activists to come and speak, they give a whole speech and then they walk home. They're walking home alone. You don't know if they're homeless or if they have a home to go to. Don't look at the umbrella. The overall picture is amazing. It's incredible. It's amusing. It's motivating. There is so much hope in seeing where we could be if we come together. But when we go back to who we are, when we settle back and the whole wave is gone, where do we stand? And then you realize so many people don't have homes, so many people are struggling in their individual lives. So how do we help them? And that's the trauma we're living with. The trauma of, I'm gonna go home and strive and be hungry alone. You want to know if I ate tonight or not. So people get that, like, oh, you don't care about me, so why should I care about you? And then they start looking out for themselves instead of for everyone. So if we go back and look individually, help each other, whether it's business-wise, if your friend sends you a $500 shirt, don't ask for discount. Then no, support it as you would, other than buying a $1,000 T-shirt from Nike, because those are the same people we're fighting against. But you want to support me because you don't want me to be better than you. At the end of the day, like, it comes to that competition. It comes to that, if you don't want to help me better, then I can't help you get better. So then we get stuck at the same time.
Yeah, incredible. I feel like I don't have to say anything to that because it's so true. We've seen it over and over again, where instead of building each other, the jealousy, the competition, we are cutting each other's from under the knee. And who could have said any better? My question to you, my next question, and this is taking us international. Do you mind answering a question on the governance within the African community on the continent?
I don't mind. As long as you narrow it down. Yeah.
I'm definitely well, actually, I'm asking you a general question because for me, when we look at all of the global big organizations, big countries, or I guess the top countries in terms of policy influencers, Africa is never on the table. And last time we had you on the program, you talked about how if you are not sitting on the table, you are on the table. And I feel like for us, and I think this is an understanding most Africans, if not all of us have, where Africa is definitely on the table being eaten, whether you talk about what's being taken towards the Asian side or coming to the West, or basically we are sort of a hub, we have resources, but at the end of the day, the beneficiaries are usually the first world, if you will. How do we change that so your generation, when your generation takes the lead, we're no longer trying to deal with the same problems that our ancestors and now the people who are passing us the torch are dealing with, which is trying to figure out where we fit in. Every time we bring on a new leader, they have to fight to figure out what's ours and what's for the international community, even though we are in the countries that we belong to. How do we actually get Africa to be for Africans and, of course, welcome the world as a result, but at least having the total control of our own nations within Africa?
That's a pretty good, wide question. But I would say, first, we need to recount the way we measure our worth or wealth, both, in a way that the rest of the world, the Western world, before, let's get back, maybe start from religion. I like narratives in a way that Africa never needed Christianity. They brought that and told the white man, you could kill and enslave the black person and then go back and beg for forgiveness. So there is no ownership or responsibility to that. God will wash away my sins. But that was in their favor. That wasn't a way I could kill and slaughter everyone on my way and go back and give this responsibility to someone else. Lay down at Jesus' feet. So when we take that, and then Africa leaned back into that, we surrender, we give thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, the priest or the pope is sitting on a silver chair. There is thousands of kids on the streets who have no beds. And we're still giving tithes and offering. So when we take that perspective of what is the African wealth, is it the buildings China is building? Look at how the climate change is. It's because of their industries.
Africa, we never had that problem because we have a forest, but they're telling us to tear it down because they are bringing the way they measure their wealth, the way they measure the dollar's worth into what we quote. But we are not like them. We don't need Sanskrit to exist. So if we don't need that, why should we compare? Why should I put on the same lotion you wear or dress on? So we should stop the comparison, realize what are we capable of? Why are we running into the civilization, the modernization? What was Africa before all this? What is our wealth? Does our riches lie in? Is it the train station they're bringing in? How did we travel? People lived peacefully. Now I'm almost homeless in Canada because I took a plane to Canada. So that's what I'm thinking. But I'm like, if I stayed home, if I never listened to the white man of $1 is better than your mother's potatoes and plantains and beans, that French fries is better than my mother's milk, then I would never have been convinced. What it is they see what you have, they see the richness, they see what Africa has, and they're utilizing that. They're trading the real silver with the more shiny fake one. They're taking our gold, why they sell it at a higher price and even more vandalized than we gave it to them. Because they're lying to us. They're saying, oh, this is the currency. This is what richness looks like. Build more houses, tear down your trees, stop cultivating, stop putting your students to school, make them work in the industry. We'll give them money. Before you know it, you don't have a home. But we lived peacefully. We had a clear environment. So we need to realize that Africa as a continent can live and exist by itself without a white man's hand. And whenever they come, they take something real and leave something fake, plastic, that will leave us polluted.
Yeah. I would add to that, I know you didn't say this, but I'll add the GMO, the genetically modified products that we have now that are taking over all our natural resources in Africa. Of course, I know this again is controversial, but the IMF and the World Bank, we know you're there. We know we need you, but we know the interest is not for Africa. So these are challenges, of course, for the future generation. But I think for your generation, hopefully, we can figure out solutions that brings all of these equal players, all of these players to a table where we are all actually eating on the table, not being eaten on the table. And that counts, of course, all of the points you just made.
Not to interrupt, I was going to say that it's right for us to blame the past generation, but our children, this generation, will blame us. So it's up to us to look at our leaders at this moment, look them in the eye, because whatever currency, whatever loans they are taking is on our heads. And if we can't pay it enough, our children will have to pay. So it's a generational kind of like loans that we go bankrupt. So when you say our future generation, I think it starts right now. It starts with, we'll give you $15 to build this house. We really need that because you're putting a price on our head and they'll ask it to you because like right now, I think it was Rwanda or Congo that has a loan with the UN. And recently when the whole pandemic hit in, they asked them to pay them back right when they were broken. And so they were like, we don't have the money. Okay, they're like, okay, you don't have the money, we'll take the land. That's how it always works. They wait for you. I think it's my brother, John Kelly. He told me that rats have an interesting way of eating human beings' feet. They bite while they blow. So it feels good. Before you wake up, you wake up with a half a leg.
Yeah, I think everything you're saying, Rita, like when we talk about this, sometimes one of the things I love about your generation is these are points that our people, the generations before us, have been afraid to say. And the fact that you can say it before the audience and let everybody know what we are facing. And that's really my mission. My mission is we've got to talk about these issues. There is no way of hiding from it because it's a reality, all of these things that are happening. But Rita, we have to go, but before we go, I would like to ask you, obviously you have so many other platforms that you're running. Let us know, let the audience know where to find you on social media, and of course you can also remind us again your work in the community with the United for Humanity. Where can we find you on the website and on the social media platforms?
So on the website, say unitedforhumanity.net. That's my organization's website, and my Instagram is Rita Ngarambe, as well as my Facebook and Twitter is Rita Ngarambe Lawrence.
Thank you so much. We could talk forever, but we have to go. Rita, hopefully you join us again next time. But in the meantime, let's take you to a commercial.
There are several practical measures you can take to protect yourself from the new coronavirus. One of the most important is regular, safe, and effective hand hygiene, using soap and water or alcohol-based hand rub. Here are the steps recommended by WHO to follow. You too can have safe and clean hands anywhere. Now I'm calling on the world to take the WHO Safe Hands Challenge to be ready for coronavirus.
Welcome back, and as you have just seen, the incredible Rita Ngarambe. We are so blessed in the Rwandan community here in Toronto to have her. Rita is so busy in so many different communities, and so every time we have a privilege for her to either do a poem, which you had earlier, do one of these discussions, or even just do the work that she does, whether it's raising awareness, raising funds for communities. That's just, again, it's a privilege, and I know she's going to do big and great things soon. Just hope, Rita, you don't forget that we were here. Bring us a check or two. The RCHC is going to need a bit of that for our work in the future. Anyways, I want to do maybe a little bit of news again. Obviously, again, it's COVID. We're talking about COVID, letting people know what's going on. And here in Ontario, they say that while COVID testing capacity has expanded across Canada, experts stress that the increased testing does not explain the worrisome trend in positive infections, and that the lagging indicators of hospitalizations and deaths are still to come. Obviously, this is again the worrying, because we have been hoping for the numbers to reduce, but obviously looking at the recent indicators and looking at the recent news, this is not looking good. Also, as of October 5th, for this government say that the visitors who are going to be visiting long-term care homes in these areas will be restricted to only staffs and essential visitors, as well as essential caregivers. Those are the only people that are going to be allowed into the long-term caregiver. Obviously, again, this is to make sure that people who can make it into those places are limited to numbers of people who are only needed, and because a lot of these people, as you know, this disease is attacking people with low or weaker immune system. Last and not least, it says this is the same piece of news. It says up to 2 individuals can be essential caregivers. Again, that's really restricted when you think about the level of care that is required for these kinds of homes. So to be able to limit numbers is very concerning. But again, this is everywhere. We are just obviously covering whether it's Toronto, we talked about Quebec earlier. We want to get to as many of these reports and of course as many of these communities as we can. Every day we come here from 6 to 7 p.m. And we welcome you. We ask you to always join us. Right? So maybe let me ask this again. Please do share this. If you have a group that is African, if you have groups that are interested in African communities, if you have anybody that wants to come and appear to our program, if you have anybody that wants to come and give us their take on the community, as you saw with Rita, send us the numbers, send us their contacts, let them know that we want to feature as many continental African Canadians as we can. We are also looking for experts, we're looking for community leaders, we're looking for entrepreneurs, anyone who wants to talk about the challenges, the solutions specifically, because we don't just focus on challenges. The reason to look at the challenges is so we can find better solutions, is so we can build a better world, as Rita was saying earlier, is so we can take the responsibility and see the future that is better than what we found. So without going too far, tonight's program was this, and we hope to see you again tomorrow, same place, same time, and have a good one.